August 2021. German Chancellor Angela Merkel visited Moscow for the last time before leaving office. At the press conference, he once again called on Putin to release Navalny, a well-known Russian opposition anti-corruption activist who was imprisoned in polar prisons in the Arctic Circle. The outgoing Merkel's influence on Putin is obviously much worse than before. He refused to admit on the spot that Navalny was imprisoned for a criminal offense, not against himself. 2.5 years later, the sharpest opponent of Putin, who was imprisoned twice and several times, held a press conference after his death in prison, saying Putin should be responsible for the matter. Navalny was born in the Soviet Union in 1976 and has both Russian and Ukrainian ancestry. In the same year, he spent his childhood in Obninsk, southwestern Moscow, grew up in the late Soviet Union, and experienced the collapse of superpowers and the chaotic wave of privatization. In 1998, Navalny received a law degree from the People's Friendship University of Russia. Later, he worked as a lawyer and obtained the securities trading qualification of the Russian Federal University of Finance. During this period, while on vacation in Turkey, he met his wife Yulia, who was from an intermediate public family. The two had a son and a daughter. Financial lawyers are a standard high-paying industry. Navalny could have lived his life comfortably, but he chose to get involved in political affairs. Perhaps it was because lawyers had seen too many injustices, and the loyal scholar Navalny hoped to promote social justice and crack down on collusion between officials and businessmen and corruption. At the same time, he was also a Russian nationalist who opposed the provision of federal subsidies to Chechnya and other republics of the North Caucasus, opposed immigrants, and had supported the invasion of Georgia. On the Crimea issue, he initially had an ambiguous attitude. After the outbreak of the Ukrainian war, Navalny changed his position, clearly supported the restoration of the 1991 border, and advocated the cessation of invasion and withdrawal of troops. It is not surprising that everyone's perspectives always change over time. In 2000, Navalny joined the left-wing Yablou party. Yablou means apple in Russian, which was established in 1993. It initially had 27 Duma seats, and then declined year after year. Navalny was promoted quickly and became the second in command of Moscow in 2006, but was fired for supporting Russian populism. Since then, while working as a lawyer, he has written articles in the media to express his views and expose corruption. In 2008, he disclosed the corruption of Russian oil company on his blog, pointing his finger at the top management, and the number of clicks exceeded 1 million. The senior management noticed this young man in his early 30s for the first time, a good boy, knowing how to use the internet as a killer weapon. In the following years, Navalny deepened his efforts in anti-corruption and established an anti-corruption foundation. The oligarchs and powerful interest groups created by Yeltsin's privatization and Putin's nationalization were all his targets and gradually became famous. More than 30,000 netizens once elected him as the mayor of Moscow online. In 2011, in the Russian Duma election, the opposition accused Putin of fraud in unified Russia, and Navalny participated in the protest led by opposition leader Nemtsov, demonstrating excellent organizational capabilities and dispatching crowds through social networks. The participants grew rapidly from thousands to tens of thousands, from Moscow to more than 50 cities, and the fingers turned from Duma fraud to Putin. This is the first large-scale opposition to Putin since he came to power. Navalny became famous and his fans soared from 50,000 to 2 million, at the cost of 2 brief jail time. After being released from prison, he decided to embark on the road to opposing Putin. On the one hand, he led the Anti-Corruption Foundation to produce and release more than 100 documentaries on the corruption of top Russian powerful people, the super villas, luxury yachts on the Black Sea, and the amount of embezzlement in units of billions are all attracted by the eye. The evidence displayed in these videos may not be comprehensive and authoritative, but the public has a scale in their hearts. On the other hand, Navalny also participated in the creation of multiple opposition groups and tried to compete for the position of president of the Russian Federation. Unfortunately, he had no power, no background, so it was not easy. Being imprisoned has become a common occurrence in Navalny. In July 2013, he registered for the mayor of Moscow, and the next day, the verdict was announced for the timber case he had previously involved. In this case, when Navalny was accused of serving as the governor of Kirov state, he forced the state-owned timber factory to sell timber at a low price. Although he himself did not make a profit, the timber factory sold $500,000 less. Navalny said it was a normal business transaction, and the court sentenced him to 5 years, which caused dissatisfaction among the people, and his supporters took to the streets to support him. As things were about to go big, Navalny was released, and the case was a big start. In the Moscow mayor competition, he received a 27.2% approval rating, ranking second. At the end of 2017, Navalny was about to run for president. The authorities banned him from participating on the grounds of having a criminal record. He was dissatisfied and called for protests. He was arrested several times. In 2019, in the Moscow Duma election, the opposition was once again deprived of their qualifications for various reasons. Navalny stood up and took the lead in protesting, and was arrested again, defined by agents as Western agents, collecting money from foreigners. This time he was imprisoned. He developed symptoms of poisoning. Some said that he was food allergic. In short, he was rescued by the hospital and was detained for 30 days and released. A year later, on August 19, Navalny, who was on parole, suddenly felt unwell on his way back to Moscow from Tomsk and showed signs of poisoning. The plane landed in Omsk in an emergency, but was still unconscious when he was sent to the hospital for emergency treatment. A spokesman for the Anti-Corruption Foundation said that it might be that the airport drink was put on the food. It was later said that it was in the hotel, under the poison, on the Navalny underwear. The news came out and became international headlines. Both France and Germany expressed their willingness to provide medical protection for Navalny. Navalny's wife called on Putin to allow them to go to Berlin for treatment. In 2022, Navalny's life was saved, and German doctors detected military nerve agent developed by the Soviet Union from his body. Novichok generally believed that it was done by Russian agents. Of course, the Russian side denied that during the recovery period of Navalny, the Russian prison administration took advantage of his violation of parole regulations and arrested him and was imprisoned. I feel like the agent means that your family is in exile in Germany and don't come back. After experiencing poisoning and multiple jail time, Navalny understood what it means to return home. But he was still determined to return home and continue his career. This is really admirable. On January 17, 2021, Navalny returned to Moscow by flight and was arrested when he got off the plane. Many countries have called for his release, and Russian supporters have protested more than once, but none of them have any use. After a series of pulling and trials, Navalny was eventually sentenced to 19 years. In theory, scholarly opposition parties like him can be kept in lockup, and even if they are released, they will not cause too much storm. He is immortal with shortcomings when he is alive, but if he dies, he will become a martyr. However, the world is a huge grassroots team. On February 16, 2024, 47-year-old Navalny died in prison, with the cause of death unknown. What changes will his own doing and his legacy bring to Russia need time to prove. That's all today.